Welcome in, everyone. This is our flow recap for the week of 3/3 to 3/7/2025. As always, we're going to kind of go over our flow that was called out in Stock Hub. We're going to obviously kind of look at what made the flow interesting, go over the full range of the contracts. Again, you're not expected to exit at the top. I just like to go over the full range of contracts so people can kind of see how the contracts moved. And we'll kind of touch on some tips and tricks. It was another volatile week in the market, and we had a lot of good pieces of flow that came in. So let's get started here. So we're going to start here with the 314 MSTR calls. So here we are. We can see on 3/3 we had 1,321 contracts come in here at 260, 343,000 in total premium. So as a lot of people know, strategy now, very volatile, crypto related. So let's kind of take a peek at the actual flow that came in here. I like to bump that result out so I can kind of see everything. So what I see here is obviously you can see most of this volume kind of coming in chunks here. So again, as that volume starting to come in here, and these came in right at open. Little wider bid-ask spread here. They're coming in right at the ask. Pretty good size. I see a nice spike in the IV. Looks good to me there. Kind of coming up here too a little bit. So IV drops a little bit here. Obviously, strategy probably pulled back a little bit in the day, but this was our initial entry here. Obviously, this is our big size, so this is the one that stuck out to me there. And this one actually was a pretty wild ride, and some of these you can get a little better discount on, like these were 14 days to expiration at the time. I kind of like to wait to look for a support spot and all that, but you can see our average fill here, so 260. I have 265 marked on my spreadsheet here as the fill. So this one could have got a really good discounted entry here. These dropped all the way to 77. So most people are going to probably have a stop loss in there, but this is kind of why I like to look for discounted entries, because you can catch these the discounted entries and ride it up for the wave. But these dropped down to about 77 here. These hit a high of 650 here. You can see that down here, 650 here on the 6th here, so on Thursday. So those actually made a full return here from 265 to 650, so 145% on those. So we got a little dip, and then these actually popped here on the 4th as well. So you would have kind of rode those down the same day and probably opened up and then could have rode those up too. But those making a good return, and I like to look for returns at least 15%. Even if 10-15% would be my minimum for a return, just because you're kind of getting a little back. I mean, you want some back on your capital. You don't want 2-3%, but when I'm looking at trades and flow, I like if I'm up 10%, I'll probably have my stops on at break even. But 10% is still a really good trade. So I mean, you get 10% on $1,000, 10% on $10,000 starts adding up. So keep that in mind there. But those making that return, 265 to 650. Up next, we have the 331 IWM 202 puts, and a lot of people know puts printed this week, so this should be an easy one to do. So here is our whale coming in here. So we had 4,173 contracts at 208 for an average fill, 866,000 on that premium. So 4,000 here. I want to kind of come down here and show everybody too. So here's our third where that flow came in. You can see most of that flow kind of carrying over. Obviously, maybe a little came off here. Somebody could have took some profits there. Obviously, there's other traders on these contracts. But we can see these started to move up. Actually, let's look at the flow the same day here. Let's pop these. I like to pop the results out so I can kind of get a view of everything in a full view here. So right here, perfect example. You can see these are considered open buy to opens or sell to opens. We can't 100% know if they're buying them to open them or selling them to open them. Nothing in the world can tell you that except that person. But we can kind of get a good idea reading the data here. So you can see You can see that spot price increasing here, so that's a good sign there. You can see that it's mostly coming in here at the ask. Good sign that ask starts to kind of increase and kind of seeing that spot following it. You look at that IV's following it right here. It's a repeated hit descending fill. That's just telling you that fill's increasing as that flow's coming in. When we kind of look at it here, obviously you can see 208. These started to move up same day, hit a high of 351 on the day. These hit their max return here on Friday at 575. So that's 175.12% on those. And this is also really interesting because we also had some more flow here on the 4th come in here at 445 and 443. So about another 4,000 or so contracts. You can see that in that volume here. Majority of that carrying over again. So to me, this is kind of telling me that whale may have averaged up on these contracts and added to their position. So let's move on here. So good trade there. Again, the IWM's 209 to 575, 175%. Looked like that whale was still in. HIMS, this would be our loser for the week, or one of our losers for the week. Obviously, there will be losing flow. But we look at these 1,100 contracts, 230, 199 average. Kind of looking at the flow here. Again, flow does, and this is why I'm always saying you don't 100% know. You need to have a plan in place. That IV pops coming in at the ask, good size, good premium. And this one's a good example of a whale kind of passing off contracts. So this was our original entry here. You can see, so let's go down here and look at the third, so 1,300 contracts traded. Obviously, not all of that's going to carry over because there's some other intraday volume in there. But we have most of that carry over. And then pay attention to the 4th here. We have another 1,700 contracts traded. So that's going to be in this big candle and some of this other flow here too. So just to make it easy, we'll say 1,700 contracts. You can see there's an open interest change of minus 341 here. So this whale passed these contracts off onto somebody else at 51. So this whale sold these for a 74% loss. So now on my end, I'm not going to let something drop that far. I kind of look for about 20, maybe just kind of, it depends on your days of expiration too. If you're 60 days out and you're down 20%, probably going to let it ride a little bit, but keep that in mind. Always make sure to have stop losses on your trades. So let's move on here. So SPY, we had the 311 590 puts. So we can see this is where these all came in here. I'm going to pop this back to the 3rd and we can take a peek at it that way. So here's our 3rd. This was our whale entry here. You can see 671 contracts, 374,558 per contract. We look at the flow here. So again, you can see that IV increasing up here. Obviously, that's your big whale there. That's the one I'm watching, that size, that premium. So a good sign there, and we even had a little there before. And you can see at the day, on that day, obviously, net put premiums were up. Put volume was kind of rising. Net call premiums dropping. Oh, let's go back. Whoops. So 7 days. So obviously that's your candle there. These hitting a high here of 22.55 on the 7th. That's a 304.12% return there on SPY. Up next we have the 4.4 RKLB 15 puts. Again, another good example here. We can see our original entry here. So 7,900 contracts at 44 cents a contract, 351K for premium. And you can see these actually moved up the next day here. So 44, you can see that yellow line, that's just your contract fill, hitting a high of 80 here on the 4th. Actually, I've got 87 as a high here on the 4th. So you can see that 87 there on the 4th, it looks like. And then we have some volume here at 63 a contract, so about another 7,800. So kind of looking at that math here. And you can't confirm this until the next day when open interest updates. But to me, this looks like, okay, well, they're up. They're probably securing profits. So when I come down here and look, obviously, so that's the third, most of that, all that's pretty much carrying over into the fourth. So on that candle, now remember it was about 7,800, so we'll just say 8,000 to make it a little more math compatible and easier. So we see about 4,500 of that carrying over. So to me, it looks like when you look at that ask side and bid side, it looks like they may have sold some, well, the math doesn't really math on this one to me. So this is a really interesting one, kind of, because you have 8,000 original contracts carrying over. You have a bid side of 5,300 come in, and then you have a minus here on the 5th of about roughly that. And then we did have some ask side in here. So to me, I want to kind of look at that day. So let's go back to the 4th here. Okay, so it makes it a little bit better when you zoom in. So again, so we had 2,800 contracts come in there at just the bid. Then we had 5,000 here. So to me, that whale probably closed these at 60, and somebody may have just bought some at the bid here. So because you're seeing that contract. No, I'm actually looking at this 2,800. So we have 5,000 carryover from the 8. So maybe they passed these contracts off onto some. So to me, they probably sold these, passed these off to somebody else, and then sold the rest. So that's why we're not seeing that full range there. Oops, let's go back and actually look at that. Sorry. So to me, they passed the contracts off, about 2,500 of them to somebody else, and then they cut the rest. So that's where that math is staying some in that open interest and then the other disappearing. So that makes sense there. So those running from 0.45 to 0.87. Next up, we have the 314 SMH 225 puts. Again, these coming in at, we got them actually at 558. I got them at 610 here. So 610, this would be our candle here. Let's look at the flow. Let's take a peek here. So we got kind of two chunks of flow coming in here. So first up, obviously, I'm looking at that IV. Spots coming in at the ask. Good premium, good size. We see more coming in here, so repeated hits, ascending fill, IV pops. Again, that spot price increases or decreases a little bit from there, so still keeping an eye on that IV. But again, keep in mind this is coming in at different times too, so that IV is going to be different depending on where the stock price is moving. Come up here, again, IV is increasing even though these are bid sides. So what I always tell everybody is that this is why you need to look at the raw flow. Not all bid side flow will be a sell. Not all ask side flow will be a call or a buy. So kind of look at this, kind of get a determination by looking at your data points. Again, this isn't all foolproof. It's not 100%. This is just kind of, you're finding data points, you're following them, following criteria, all that. So again, that's why I always tell everybody have a stop loss, because these people are human too. You don't know what they're actually thinking or doing, all that stuff. So kind of just following this up here, kind of watching that IV, that fill, so coming all in at the bid. So a little drop in that IV at the end, but not on a lot of premium and volume. So that looked good to me there. Again, 594, these actually hit the high of, so these came in on the 3rd. So we hit our high on the 4th here at 1090 here. So that's a 78.69% gain. These were trading about 10.15 for a high yesterday on Friday. So another good find there. So up next we have Apple, the 411 210 puts. So again, another good find here. Some time on these, and keep in mind there might be some longer term flow here, especially once we get into Friday. There's longer term flow, so I won't spend too much time on that flow just because it hasn't really made a move yet. So our Apple flow here, 1,330 contracts, 171 per contract, 227K on that candle. Again, kind of looking at that flow here. Let me this out. So again, I'm looking where that flow starts to come in, IV jump, ask side fills, little wider bid ask here, so you're seeing that aggression there on that buy. Flow looked good there. And if we come back and actually look at the third here, I want to adjust this. I do kind of like looking at that net premium too on that day. So this is how that flow came in Thursday. Obviously, you can see there was only 129 contracts. All that volume coming in, you automatically know it's an opening trade. You see that net put premium spiking too. A lot of put volume here towards close. That call premium's kind of in the middle here. But when you kind of match it up with other market dynamics, obviously we had our market tide was pretty bearish on that day. We had a lot of volatility. Market wasn't holding gains. So you can kind of discount that net call premium. So that's just where kind of having time in the market kicks in. So again, we got to actually look at the Apple movement. So there's that Apple movement. So kind of chopped down a little bit on the 4th here, and then we gap down there on the 5th, and we hit our high of the week here on the 5th at 267 here. So 56.14% on those. Next up, we have our NVDA. So we're moving on to 3.4 now. So we're on to the 321 NVIDIA 114 calls. Let's take a peek at these. So again, once you start kind of getting, especially on these more mega caps where you start seeing a lot more volume, it gets to be kind of tough to track everything. But so I kind of just look at the big spikes here and all that, just kind of a little tip there. So here is our flow coming in at 694 here. So 8,500 contracts, 694, 5.9 million, pretty good premium there. So you can see these actually made that move up the same day and hit 990. So they chopped about 929 the next day too as well. So plenty of time to get out of something like that. So let's take a peek at the flow here. So let's take a peek at our results. So usually on something like this too, you start seeing a lot of multi-leg stuff come in eventually. So I kind of like to, when I see that on something like this, I'm kind of really paying attention to that volume and open interest. We'll touch on that after this too. But again, can see as that volume starts to come in, all that whales trade starts to come in. So there's your spike in your IV, and that's a pretty big spike in IV. Good size, good premium. Seeing that IV stay up here. So I'll see a little drop here, and I always will look at the size just to see how much of a size that is. I don't know if it's a big size, like if it was at 2,700 and that IV dropped, I'd probably pass on these. But, and again, that spot dropped a little bit there too, but still towards that ask there. So moving back up, can see it kind of comes back up here. And we look good there flow-wise. And here's our flow. So again, we're looking at the 4th. So let's kind of look here. We had 14,000 contracts traded that day. Only 5,800 of them carried over. So this whale more than likely closed these same day here. So again, entry, you see that contract price moving up here. Little moving in the next day. So if you swung those, still enough time to get out. But those moving from 690 a contract to 953, so a 38% move on those. Next up, we have the 314 GOOG Google 170 calls. So again, coming in on the 4th here, I have our fill at 375. So here's your whale entry. These hitting a high here on the 6th here at 795. So 112% on those. And again, another one. So we can see about 1,400 contracts traded there on the 4th. So again, pay attention to that. We only had 2,500 carry over. So to me, it almost looks like that whale probably got out same day here because you're not having that full amount of volume carry over here. But again, really nice move on those GOOG calls there. BA, these actually made a nice little intraday pop here. So let's I want to move this back to the 4th and we can look at it that way. So again, here's your whale entry, 715. Let's look at the flow. So we look at the flow again, IV pops and it's a pretty nice pop. IV continues to rise. Spots coming in at the ask, so ask side fills, that's IV staying up there. So now pay attention to this where it says descending fill. Now this is why you always need to kind of look at the flow. Where is our descending fill? Descending fill just essentially means that spot dropped a little bit on its way up. So I can see that right here. We had 7 contracts coming at 714. That's still on the ask side. It's not a big chunk of the trade. I can discount that because all my other data points are there. And again, we can see 715, little drop there on the day. And then these actually came up and hit high of the day here. Let's come down to the 4th. They actually hit 815 here on the 5th. But they did make a nice intraday move up here. So let's go and look at the 5th here. So yep, okay, so here's our full trade. So there's that 715. Then we're coming up here in the 8s. You can see that right there. You can see 815 was the high. Obviously the ask was probably a little bit higher on that. But those moving from that 715 to 815, just a little bit under 14%, about 13.99%. Again, this is why I say you should have stops adjusted up. 13% still a good return on a trade. You just need to obviously monitor your trades, adjust stops up smartly just to secure the most profits. Next up, the 516 Oxy 35 puts. Let me adjust this. So again, there's your single entry, 16,000 contracts, 23, 365K. That whale's still in, but these contracts are actually up. They're at about $25 per contract right now. So again, now this is why I always tell everybody, look at percents. 23 to 25 here. You might think, okay, well, that's not a big return. That's $2 a contract. That's technically an 8.7% return. And these did actually hit a high here of 26 on the 5th here too. So, well, that might only seem like, oh, that's only $3 a contract. I'm only making $3 a contract. Look at percents. That's a 13% return. 13% on this 365,000 there. That whale's up over $30,000 right there. So keep that in mind. That is the one thing I always tell people. Pay attention to percent, not volume, but this whale looks like they're still in here as well. Intel calls, these made a nice move here. 52, 4,300 contracts, 224, 52 the fill. These hitting a high here of 85 on the 6th. So 63.46% on those. We'll kind of go through these a little quicker now just to kind of not chew up to everybody's time too much. So we had 4,700 contracts here. 515 was your fill. 2.4 million on that trade there. Again, just kind of looking at that flow. Again, when we look at that flow, I can probably tell you right away. I mean, that IV is increasing. Repeated hits ascending fill. There's our ascending fill. IV is increasing. Flow looks good. Contracts moved from that 513 and they actually hit a high of 675 here on the 4th. So that's a 31% intraday move there. Again, kind of just looking at the 4th here, I just want to pull up that net call premium. Again, see that net call premium's up there, call volume's up. Bid side is on the, or puts are on the bid side for net premium. So good return there. Again, those IWMs 514 to 675, 31%. GM here, this one is actually down, but let's take a peek here. So GM, these 110 was the fill. They're kind of chopping about 73 right now, so that whale's down 33%. So now this is what I was kind of talking about earlier. When this is kind of where you have to kind of be patient on something. This whale has 69 days on these contracts. They're a little longer term on these. Obviously, you don't want something to drop 80%, but I mean, this is where something I'm looking for a discounted entry because I know that whale's longer term on there. These whales don't get the best fills, so kind of watch. I like to kind of chart something out in 69 days. I'm not hopping in that second. I'm going to kind of maybe wait a couple days, wait for a resistance spot, and go from there. So that whale's down currently 33% on those. BAC here, these hit about 18%. 133 was your fill there. They came up and hit 158 here, kind of chopped about that 150 into close. Looks like that whale's kind of cutting them here at 102-ish. But a trade on our end, again, moving up at least over our 15%, so 18.80% there. Sound, these again made kind of a nice little pop intraday here, 75 up to 92 there. Again, that's 22% there. You're coming towards the end of the day. I like to secure profits. If I see profits, I'm going to take profits. I can always re-enter again if there's a discount the next day, but if I see profits, I'm taking profits. So Apple, again, we had more Apple puts, 227, that was our entry there, 329. These actually came up and hit 388. Actually, I think these hit a little higher on the day, 425. So those 345 to 425, another 23.19% gain there. Again, a lot of volume here, so it gets kind of hard to track something like that. C, so these ones, tiny return, obviously some more time on those. Those coming in at 171, they hit about 187 there. They hit about 9%, 9.3%. Not a super big return, but looks like that whale's mostly still in here, obviously. Some time to go on those 40 days. So again, 9%, I still consider that a win. You're up almost 10%. There's a lot of volatility that week, so you should be having stops on. You should have a plan in place. Well, so this was a flow and chart play. Let me pop open Discord here 1 second. Actually, we'll touch back on well here because well would technically, so my flow and charts plays will come from, so they're posted on 3.5 in the evening, so they would actually be valid on 3.6. So we'll come back to that one here. So MS 328, 128 call. These are down a little bit right now, so 260 was a fill. Looks like that whale may have cut some here at 145 there for about 44% loss. Most of the, so 800 contracts, 155. Looks like most of that's still in there. Obviously, a little time on those again. So again, this is where I'm saying I'm looking for a discounted entry. There's 20 days on these at whales, maybe more mid, longer term on those. But that whale's currently down there at 44%. So Palantir, these 125 calls. Again, 34 days on these, so could still make a move. We don't know. There's your whale entry, 1,186 contracts, 97K, 82 per contract. And we look at the 7th here, what they finished at about 51, kind of 53-ish. So that whale's down 37%, but again, whale's still in. Good amount of time on those still. So next up, we're on to the 6th here, so we'll touch on that well one here at the end. So DraftKings, these making a phenomenal move for us. 1,631 contracts, 164,000, 101 was the fill. Hit a high of 440 here yesterday on Friday. That is a 335% gain on those. IWM puts, obviously puts just kind of printed all week. 101 was the fill there. 103 actually is the fill. These hit 118 on the day, so 14%, 14.56%. Looks like that whale may have took some off there at that high almost. MRVL, these came in right after earnings. These actually made a little intraday move here, so I want to pop this back, and that whale did close these intraday, and I will show you how we can tell that. So we got to go to the 6th. So this is our whale entry. So 564 contracts, 301 was the fill, 169K. These ran up from that 301, and they hit 410 up here. I think we got 410 for a high there. And then we have some more volume coming in here, about 549 contracts. So again, keep that in mind with that volume. Then we had another 570, not seeing multi-leg. Now again, when we look at that volume, how much of that's carrying over? Only 1,300. So whale in, whale probably out here at 315 or 329. Don't know 100%. And somebody else just bought 500 contracts and then kind of did some stuff in here too. But only 1,300 of that carrying over. So that whale closed those same day for about 36.67% on those. So Baba puts, these made a good move as well. Let me pop these back. So this was our whale entry here, 206, 211 I have here. They ended up hitting 314 here, so nice 48% intraday move on those. Looks like some of that volume coming off here on the 7th. When we look at the 6th here, again, 2,800 of that carrying over. Again, not the full amount carrying over, so taking some profits off probably in here throughout the day. Up next, we have these Rivian 5/16/10 puts. Again, these making a decent little move too as well. Little slower mover. So 87 was our fill here. Looks like we had some more get added here at 85. Again, you can see most of that volume carrying over here into the 7th. And we can see these hitting a high here of about 99 yesterday on Friday. So making a 13% move there. The S-Bucks 321.104 puts, Starbucks puts. And I kind of want to pop this down, make it a little easier to read now. So again, this is a good example of a whale adding to their position. So our original entry was these at 122. This was our call out at 122, 1,000 contracts, 122, 122K. So now taking a glance at this, so again, they're both on the 6th. So you might see this and think, okay, they're exiting here at 156 for about little over maybe 30%. Paying attention to that volume and open interest, most of that carried over. This whale added to their position at 156. These hit a high of 260 here yesterday, but from our original entry from that 122 to 260, that's 113%. And moving on here, so next we have, let me find them, the QQQ 404 503 calls. Obviously, whale has some time on here, 27 days. There's your whale fill. They're about 902 right now. Whale's on about 21% on those. So now this is something where I'd see a discounted entry, and I'm kind of monitoring. Obviously, that whale didn't close anything on Friday, probably. Could be a discounted entry on there. So whale's down 21% on those. TPR, the 417.70 puts. Again, these made a nice move the next day. 132, they actually kind of ran up the same day, but hitting a high of 310 here yesterday on Friday. So 133 to 310, 133% on those. And next up we have the 414 AMD 104 calls. These kind of sitting, they're just a little green right now, 325, 673 contracts, 218K premium. Closing about 335 yesterday, so that whale's up on these 3% right now. Obviously a little time on those. So we're going to go back to well. So this was a flow and charts one, so I'd like to show everybody my flow and charts here. Let me pull up my Discord quick, 1 second here. So our flow and charts. So this was my one play that I'm taking for the week. So these are down right now, obviously some time on those, but so on the plays that I like the most, I kind of chart them out, match them up to the charts, all that. So again, we had a large whale on the 417-160 call. 293 was the average. Kind of looking at the daily chart, could see we're kind of breaking out of that flag to the upside. I was actually looking for a pullback here to the top of this flag here. Kind of looking at the flow here, you can see that I wanted to make sure that volume carried over into Wednesday, Thursday. Kind of looking at that gamma too. Obviously, that gamma's big increase there back on the 5th. When we looked at that highest volume contracts too, a lot of ask side on these higher volume calls. So Something to keep in mind there, I'm still in these. There's some more time on these. Obviously, can see that was the original whale entry. Could have got in here about 175 if you're kind of waiting on that market sell off here. I got in about 188. They're chopping about 105 right now, 128-ish, give or take. You can kind of see that in there. So they're down, but again, this is why I say it's a longer term trade. You have to be patient on trades like this. So those are down about 30% right now. So moving into Friday, XLE, the 314.87.5 calls. So here is our entry, 1,767 contracts, 150 at 265K. Actually hit a high of 181 here on the day, giving us a 20.67% return intraday on those. And you can just see that call volume's up there. That call premium's not super up there. I mean, we had some at open, which was probably part of this, and we can always come down here and let me pop that over. So that was only 1% of the total premium on there. So that's not the one driving that net premium, but see that spike in that net call premium, that net put premiums dropping, call volumes up, looked good there. Can look at the holdings of XLE too. So again, between holdings and ETF. So this ETF, this is strictly options on that ETF. So keep in mind, this would be all of the holdings on the ETF. So holdings activity and ETF activity, I like to kind of see them coincide with each other a little bit. So I mean, that was kind of coinciding with each other at open. But again, those giving us a 20% intraday move. The PG 321 175 puts, these ran into close. 188 was the fill. They ended up hitting 240 up in here, 229, 238, 240. So those moving down into close of 27.66%. Whales still in these. SPY puts 40 days on these, coming in here 535 or 525 is the... What do I got here? Where am I seeing that? These came in a little earlier on the day. So this one, you're going to have to check that open interest on Monday. So 722 was the entry. Actually came up and hit 805. So they hit about 11% here. So you see that in here, 805 there. So looks like that whale might have sold these at 773, 805. Getting a lot of volume in here, so you'd have to check that on Monday and kind of turn it in multi-leggy. So probably wouldn't re-enter anything like that. VFC, I want to touch on these last, because I'll show everybody why these were actually unusual to me. These, I just kind of want to show the movement. Well, actually, we'll look at the movement at the end. Sorry. Microsoft, the 328.405 calls, getting kind of flat. 525 was the entry. They're 551 right now. So whales up about 4%, 5% on those. Obviously, 20 days on those. SPY, we had the 312.558 puts. So again, those 127 was the fill there, 128. These actually came up to about 148 here and made a nice move into kind of close here on that little dip in SPY. So again, knowing you're coming in over a weekend, 4 days, you're going to have a couple days of theta decay. I'd like to take profits on something like this. That's 15.63% on those. The BAC 411.42 calls. We got 4,000 contracts, 144, 576K. Chopping about 135. They're down 6% right now. NVDA 328, 128 call. Again, kind of coming in here, 164. Looks like we're closing about 162, down 1%. Obviously, time on those. Now, the VFCs, I want to show everybody why these are unusual for me. So let me pop into my flow filter from yesterday and get out of my flow area. So when we look at the VFCs, I want to come down here because they came in a little bit earlier in the day. This is something that's a really good catch. This is why I like having that full flow feed open just to kind of see everything. So here's your VFCs as they're coming in. We have hits on the 417.20 call, 516.19 call, 516.20 call, 417.20 call. Lots of hits here. So you start kind of looking at them. You can see they kind of made a little move up here, a little bit on the day. About they're probably up about 15% or so. So kind of looking here, 69 days. This is the one that I had marked. 184 there. Oh, we just looked at that one, the 19. Let's look at the 20th, the 516. So again, you see these making up a move towards the end of the day. They're up about 15% or so, just kind of depending on which ones you got and all that. So 90 here, about 105. So up about 15% or so on those. But this is something I'm looking at. I see all these different strikes coming in. Good size, good premium, not a lot of open interest on these. That's interesting to me. But, and also, sorry, I want to show everybody too. So I do, for those that are not in Stock Hub, obviously, these are in our flow alerts, ask side, bid side, ETF, and our flow and charts. Long-term flow and earnings flow do not get tracked. ETF flows in here too, sorry. Again, everything's posted in real time. Can see our flow from Friday. So here's our multiple VFC hits. So I like to post everything. I don't edit anything in here. I usually just delete it and I'll repost it if I have to. I don't like saying edited on there because that you can manipulate stuff a little bit more. But again, all of our stuff's in here. And for anybody that's interested in joining Stock Hub, it's less than $1 a day. And if you want to try Unusual Wheels, feel free to use the discount code in the description. Otherwise, have a great weekend, everyone.